Hi guys, and welcome to Drive to School Chat. In these segments, we discuss a subtopic in geography on our way to school. Now today, I'd like us to talk about the Lake District, which is our mini case study for an upland landscape here in the UK. And we studied in the context of UK's evolving physical landscapes. So evolving there meaning that the landscapes have changed in the past and continue to change today. So we are looking at those landscapes in terms of how they have evolved or changed over time. So a couple of things I'd like us to mention before we get started. And the first one is the Tee-Exe line. So the Tee-Exe line is an imaginary line that goes all the way from the River Tees to the River Exe. And that line divides the UK into two parts. One part being the upland landscapes, which are in the south and southeast of the UK. And then we also have the upland landscapes, which are to the north and the northwest of the UK. Then the other thing we need to discuss as well is that those upland areas in the north and the northwest are characterized mainly by igneous and metamorphic rock. So we know that igneous and metamorphic rock are fairly resistant to erosion, and therefore they erode slower. And because they erode slower, they have formed upland landscapes here in the UK. Then in the south and the southeast, where you have lowland landscapes, you have mostly sedimentary rock, and that sedimentary rock leads to lowland landscapes because the landscape will erode a lot more. Right, so having established that, then the Lake District is an example of an upland landscape, and therefore is to the north and northwest of the Tee-Exe line. Now, what are the physical characteristics? And these are the ones that we need to know for our examination. What are the physical characteristics then of the Lake District? And we are going to talk about three main physical characteristics. The first one being weathering. So weathering processes in the Lake District. Now, because it's an upland landscape, you're likely to get variations in temperature, so daytime and nighttime temperatures. And during the day, the temperatures are likely obviously to be above zero, and because they are above zero, any water that is in that area will be in a liquid state. So water will get into rocks during the day. So if there has been rainfall, you will have water going into the cracks in those rocks during the day. Then at night, the temperatures are likely to drop below freezing. And when they drop below freezing, that that water is then going to freeze and turn to ice, obviously, so into a solid. And ice will ordinarily take up 10% more space than water does. And because of that, the more space it's taking up is going to expand the crack in the rock, and eventually that rock is going to break up. So when it breaks up, it forms rock fragments, and those rock fragments are referred to as scree. So scree is a characteristic of the Lake District, and freeze-thaw weathering is a process, the physical process that causes that scree to be a characteristic of the Lake District, an upland landscape. So we then move on to the second physical process that is taking place in the Lake District, and that is the slope processes. How are the slopes changing? So because it's an upland landscape, how are the slopes there changing over time? And because the slopes are now characterized by having scree on them, so having those rock fragments, you're likely to get rock falls as well, because these are rocks that are lying on top of each other, and they are likely to be quite unstable. So sometimes they will lose that, or obviously when they lose that stability, you're likely to have rock falls. So they're likely to, fall down the hill, so to speak, because that is basically what a rock fall is. So it's characterized by rock falls, and it's also characterized by landslides. Now, the other thing that we need to mention here is that the Lake District gets a lot of rainfall. It's actually, the Upland Landscapes and the Lake District, in this particular case, gets a lot of rainfall every year. So they get around 2,000 millimeters of rainfall every single year, which is fairly high. So it's one of the wettest parts of the UK. Now, because of that, it's also likely to cause those slopes to become saturated with water. And as a result, you're then going to have landslides taking place as well. So landslides and rock falls are the slope processes that take place in the Lake District. Then the last physical process that I'd like us to talk about is post-glacial and river processes. Now, post-glacial means after the glacial period, because post is after. So what has taken place after the glacial period? So we do know that we normally have glacials and interglacials. The glacials are like ice ages when it's fairly cold on the earth, and the last one in the UK was around 11,000 years ago. Some reports say it was 20,000 years ago. Now, why is that significant then? So you have, glacial periods, and then you also have interglacials, which are the warmer periods, like the one we have now. So how then have those changes in glacial and interglacial periods changed the Lake District? So during the glacial period, the rivers were mainly in those areas, or the slopes in those areas were mainly V-shaped valleys or V-shaped slopes. You had V-shaped valleys, and therefore the slopes were steep, if you like. However, during the glacial period, because there are sheets of ice this time around that are flowing through the landscape or through the area, they will occupy a lot more space because it's ice. They are ice sheets. So those ice sheets eroded those V-shaped valleys into U-shaped valleys. So that's one of the changes, or the changes or transformations that took place as a result of the glacial period. Now, at the bottom of those U-shaped valleys, now they are no longer V-shaped, they are U-shaped. You then have what are referred to as misfit rivers. And the reason they are called misfit rivers is because they don't seem to fit in with the landscape. The reason being that they are flowing in a very wide U-shaped valley, as opposed to what you would ordinarily get in an upland landscape, which would be a narrow V-shaped valley. So this is why they are referred to as misfit rivers, because they don't fit in with the landscape. Then the last thing that we need to know about the U-shaped valleys, or river processes, is that due to that heavy rainfall that we have mentioned, rainfall of over 2,000 millimeters every year, sometimes you're going to get flooding taking place. So the rivers, the misfit rivers, will burst their banks. And when they burst their banks, they are likely to deposit sediment or alluvium in the surrounding area, in the valley bottom, so to speak. Now, when that happens, the valley bottom becomes very, very fertile, because that alluvium is basically rock fragments, not necessarily, it's made from rocks that have broken down over time and are now in very small particles. So they contain nutrients or minerals, and those minerals then make the soil very, very fertile and good for farming. So in those areas, you're likely to get farming taking place in the valley bottoms in the Lake District. Okay, so you're likely to have, you have farming taking place, and you'll also have the type of farming that you're likely to have taking place as well, other than just growing of crops, is hill sheep farming. And the soils anyway in upland areas are fairly thin, and therefore may not necessarily be that good for growing crops. However, in those valley bottoms, you can grow crops. Right. So let's do a quick recap then. We have talked about the Lake District, which is an example of an upland landscape in the UK. And the main physical processes that are taking place in the Lake District, number one, is weathering. And the type of weathering you're getting in the Lake District is freeze-thaw weathering. Then number two, as far as the slope processes are concerned, we have rockfalls, and we also have landslides taking place. Then the last thing was post-glacial processes and river processes. And the post-glacial are the processes that happened during the glacial period led to the formation of U-shaped valleys and misfit rivers. Then those misfit rivers will flood once in a while. They will deposit alluvium in the surrounding area, so on the U-shaped valley floor, or the valley bottom, if you like. And that is going to be the alluvium that has been deposited makes it very fertile, or the soils very fertile. So those soils can then be used for agriculture, so for growing crops. And then on the slopes, you're also likely to have some hill sheep farming taking place. All right, so that concludes it then for this particular Drive to School chat. Thank you very much for joining me in this journey towards excellent exam results. If you have a topic that you'd like us to discuss on our way to school, please do let me know in the comment section below, and we will be sure to discuss it on our way to school one of these mornings. Thanks once again, all the best, and see you again soon. Bye-bye.